The restaurant was buzzing with life as the evening crowd settled in. Soft music played in the background, and the aroma of fresh dishes filled the air. Waiters moved quickly between tables, balancing trays of food, taking orders, and smiling through the chaos. Among them, there was a sense of routine, a rhythm that they had perfected over years of work. But tonight, everyone could sense something different in the air, a tension that made their steps a little lighter, their smiles a little more forced. At exactly 7 o'clock, the doors opened, and in walked a man who instantly changed the atmosphere. He was tall, sharply dressed, and exuded an air of power. There was a glint of wealth in his eyes, and a cold, almost cruel smile played on his lips. He was the millionaire everyone in town had heard about, the one who seemed to enjoy making others uncomfortable. Whispers ran through the staff as he made his way to a table near the center of the restaurant. Everyone knew him, and everyone dreaded his visits. As he sat down, he waved a hand at the waiter who had come to greet him, not even bothering to introduce himself. "I want the best table, the freshest wine, and make sure my food is perfect. I don't like waiting," he said, his voice carrying a mix of authority and disdain. The waiter nodded quickly, trying to hide the nervousness that always came with serving him. This was not the first time he had been here, and he knew what would come next. The man had a habit of pointing out every small mistake, of mocking the staff openly, and of making them feel small in front of the other diners. The millionaire scanned the menu, flipping pages slowly as if he had all the time in the world, though his impatience was evident. He muttered under his breath about the prices, about the chef, and about the way the restaurant was run. Every waiter who passed by was met with a critical eye. One young man carrying a tray of drinks felt the man's gaze burn into him, and he almost dropped the glasses in his hands. The millionaire laughed, a low, cruel sound, and shook his head. "Careful, don't ruin my evening," he said, though it was more of a taunt than advice. The staff exchanged worried glances, knowing that tonight would be another long, stressful night. The head waiter, a man who had been working here for years, tried to steady his team. "Stay calm. Don't react to him. Just do your job," he whispered, though even he felt the tension in his chest. It was a delicate balance to serve him properly while not letting his words or actions ruin the flow of the restaurant. The millionaire seemed to enjoy this power, feeding off the nervous energy that followed him like a shadow. Dinner began, and as expected, he found faults everywhere. The wine wasn't chilled enough, the bread wasn't warm enough, and the steak was cooked slightly off from what he wanted. Each complaint was met with a polite apology, but the apology never seemed enough. He raised his voice at one point, causing nearby diners to glance over with discomfort. The waiters moved quickly, trying to correct each mistake, but it seemed that nothing could satisfy him. His laughter rang out at the expense of the staff, making even seasoned employees tense up. A few tables away, a young couple watched in silence, feeling sorry for the staff. They whispered to each other about how difficult it must be to work in a place where someone like this could control the mood with just a glance. Other diners quietly shifted in their seats, some leaving earlier than planned to avoid the scene. The millionaire seemed to thrive on the attention, fully aware of the effect he had on everyone in the room. Back in the kitchen, the chefs were also on edge. Orders were double-checked, ingredients measured with extreme precision, and dishes sent out only after careful inspection. The staff worked like a well-oiled machine, but the fear of the millionaire's judgment hung over every action. He didn't just demand perfection. He demanded admiration for it, and the staff knew that no matter how hard they worked, he would find a way to belittle them. Hours passed, and the millionaire continued his routine of criticism and mockery. He laughed at small mistakes, pointed out flaws in service, and made sarcastic comments about the food. The waiters felt drained, their smiles forced, their patience tested. Yet, despite his arrogance, there was something strangely magnetic about him, a presence that drew attention no matter where he went. This only made the staff more cautious, aware that any slip-up could result in humiliation. Amid this tense environment, a new waitress arrived. She was different from the others, calm, composed, and confident in her movements. Her uniform was neat, her smile genuine, and there was an air of quiet strength about her. The staff welcomed her warmly, whispering advice about the millionaire. "He's tough, but just don't take it personally," one of the waiters said. She nodded, absorbing the guidance but remaining unshaken. There was something about her presence that seemed to shift the energy slightly, a small but noticeable ripple in the tension that filled the room. The millionaire noticed her immediately. He scanned her with a critical eye, expecting the usual nervous reaction from a new staff member. He enjoyed testing newcomers, seeing how quickly they could crumble under his scrutiny. Yet, there was something different about her posture, the way she met his gaze without flinching, and the calmness in her voice when she spoke to other staff. It intrigued him, though he would not admit it. As the night wore on, she moved efficiently, taking orders with precision and serving dishes with care. The millionaire found himself growing frustrated. She didn't react like the others. When he made a sarcastic comment about a dish, she simply corrected it politely and moved on. When he tried to intimidate her with a raised voice, she didn't shrink back or apologize excessively. Instead, she remained professional, letting her competence speak for itself. This subtle resistance was something he was not used to, and it began to disturb him in a way that was unfamiliar. The rest of the staff began to notice the change as well. They exchanged glances of relief, realizing that maybe, just maybe, this new girl could stand up to him in a way that none of them had managed before. Her presence alone seemed to challenge the millionaire's control, showing that his power over the restaurant was not absolute. As the evening came to a close, the millionaire leaned back in his chair, surveying the room with a mixture of irritation and curiosity. He had been the center of attention for hours, yet this new girl had not given him the reaction he expected. For the first time in a long time, he felt a spark of uncertainty. The staff began to relax slightly, sensing a shift in the dynamic. The tension in the air, while still present, had loosened just a little. The night ended with the millionaire leaving the restaurant, as dramatic as he had arrived. The staff breathed a collective sigh of relief, exhausted but hopeful. Among them, the new waitress quietly returned to her station, her calm demeanor unchanged, but her presence had already made an impact. She had survived the millionaire's scrutiny, and in doing so, had planted the seed for something that could change the way the restaurant operated forever. Everyone knew that the story was far from over. The millionaire would return, as he always did, but the staff now had hope. They had witnessed someone who refused to be intimidated, someone who could stand firm without losing her composure. And somewhere in the millionaire's mind, a realization was beginning to form, that not everyone could be humiliated so easily, and that maybe, just maybe, he had met his match in the most unexpected place. The restaurant staff spent the next morning preparing for another busy day, still feeling the effects of the previous evening. The millionaire's presence had left its mark, not just in the memories of the waiters but in the air, like a shadow that refused to disappear. They talked quietly among themselves about the events, trying to make sense of how one person could cause so much tension with just words and gestures. Some shook their heads at the thought of him returning, while others tried to reassure themselves that they could handle it. The head waiter, a man with years of experience, gathered the team for a brief meeting before the lunch rush. He looked at each of them, his expression serious but kind. "I know what happened last night was difficult," he began. "But we have to remember we are professionals. We cannot let anyone, no matter who they are, control the way we feel or the way we work. We serve with pride, and that is something no one can take from us." His words were met with nods and murmurs of agreement. He knew, however, that talk alone could not erase the fear and anxiety that lingered among the staff. The waiters shared stories of previous encounters with the millionaire. Some described being mocked for the smallest mistakes, while others recalled the cold, cutting remarks that seemed to humiliate them in front of the entire restaurant. Each story brought a fresh wave of tension, reminding them how careful they had to be. They all agreed silently on one thing: the millionaire had a way of making them feel powerless, and it was exhausting. Yet, beneath the frustration, there was a small spark of curiosity and hope. Perhaps things could change with someone new around. The new waitress from last night was the topic of quiet conversation. She had shown a calmness and confidence that most of the staff had never seen before. Everyone wondered what made her so different. While the others had been intimidated, she had carried herself with ease, never letting his words shake her. Some speculated that it was experience, some thought it was courage, and others simply admired her natural composure. There was a shared feeling that maybe, finally, someone had found a way to stand up to him. As the lunch crowd began to arrive, the restaurant settled into its usual rhythm. The staff moved with precision, taking orders, delivering plates, and keeping smiles on their faces. Despite the anticipation of another visit from the millionaire, there was a subtle shift in energy. The waiters were quieter, more focused, and slightly more confident. They had seen that someone could face the millionaire without breaking, and it gave them hope that they too could withstand his harsh treatment. The kitchen staff was equally alert. They had learned from experience that a wealthy customer could quickly disrupt the flow of a service if displeased. Chefs double-checked every order, tasted every dish, and communicated clearly to ensure nothing went wrong. The pressure was high, but there was a sense of determination as well. The staff had faced him before and survived. They knew that careful attention and skill were their best defense. Hours passed uneventfully, but the tension never fully left the room. Every few minutes, a waiter would glance at the entrance, anticipating the arrival of the man who had become a symbol of both fear and challenge. When the door finally opened, conversations hushed, and everyone instinctively straightened up. There he was, the millionaire, exuding confidence and arrogance, scanning the room as if to assert ownership over the space. He walked slowly to his favorite table, his eyes taking in every detail, every staff member, and every diner. He waved at the staff in his usual dismissive manner, demanding attention without even a greeting. "Make sure everything is perfect. I don't tolerate mistakes," he said, his tone sharp and commanding. The staff responded with polite nods, their movements controlled but their hearts racing. They had rehearsed these moments in their minds, but nothing could fully prepare them for the pressure of serving him again. The new waitress approached his table with calm steps, her uniform neat, her smile natural. He looked at her, perhaps expecting hesitation or fear, but found none. There was a quiet confidence in her eyes that caught his attention. He raised an eyebrow, curious and slightly unsettled. She took his order with efficiency, repeating it back to ensure accuracy, and left without a single falter. This simple act disturbed him more than any complaint he had ever made. He was used to being the center of fear and control, but here was someone who refused to bow to his authority. As the service continued, he tested her in small ways. He asked for unusual dishes, made sudden changes to his order, and even commented sarcastically on the presentation of his food. Each time, she responded politely, correcting the issue or noting his preference without hesitation or fear. Her actions were simple but deliberate, and they began to frustrate him. He was unaccustomed to being ignored in terms of intimidation. His usual tactics of ridicule were ineffective. The other staff watched in silent amazement. They whispered quietly, acknowledging how impressive it was to see her handle him. Some felt inspired, realizing that the power dynamic could be challenged. There was a newfound energy among the team, a subtle confidence that had been absent for years. This small shift was significant. It gave everyone a glimpse of what was possible when one person refused to accept humiliation. The millionaire, meanwhile, found himself caught between amusement and irritation. He had not expected this reaction, and it disrupted his sense of control. He leaned back in his chair, pretending to examine his surroundings, but his eyes never left the new waitress. He tried a few more tactics, using sharp remarks and pointed gestures, but she remained composed. Each interaction chipped away at his arrogance, though he would not admit it. Diners noticed the unusual dynamic as well. Some watched quietly, sensing a tension unlike any they had seen before. The millionaire's usual aura of dominance was tempered by the calmness of the new staff member. The atmosphere, while still tense, felt more balanced, as if the staff had reclaimed a small measure of power in their interactions. People whispered among themselves, quietly admiring the waitress's courage and composure. As the lunch service drew to a close, the millionaire finally finished his meal. He left a generous tip, but it was delivered with a distant, unreadable expression. He walked out of the restaurant with his usual flair, leaving the staff to breathe a collective sigh of relief. There was no dramatic confrontation or triumphal moment, but something had changed. The staff felt a quiet sense of victory. They had witnessed someone stand up to him without breaking, and it had shifted the energy in the room. The new waitress returned to her station, quietly checking the tables, adjusting chairs, and making sure everything was ready for the next wave of customers. Her calm demeanor remained unchanged, but those around her felt a deep respect for her ability to handle such a challenging situation. The head waiter gave her a small nod, acknowledging the courage and professionalism she had shown. The other staff members smiled at one another, understanding that the presence of this one individual had altered the restaurant's dynamic in a way that no amount of fear or intimidation had previously achieved. The day ended with a mixture of exhaustion and quiet triumph. The staff reflected on what had happened, discussing how the new waitress's calm confidence had created a ripple effect throughout the restaurant. It was a reminder that courage could be simple and quiet but still incredibly powerful. Everyone realized that the millionaire's arrogance could be faced and managed, and that sometimes all it took was one person willing to stand firm. Though they knew he would return, the staff now felt prepared. They had seen firsthand that even someone who seemed untouchable could be challenged with composure and skill. It was a lesson that would stay with them long after the lunch crowd had gone and the chairs had been stacked. The restaurant, once filled with anxiety at his arrival, now held a sense of cautious optimism. The staff had survived another encounter, but more importantly, they had learned that confidence and professionalism could change the way even the most arrogant person behaved. The following morning, the restaurant opened its doors as usual, sunlight streaming through the windows, making the polished tables gleam. The staff moved with careful efficiency, yet there was a sense of anticipation in the air. Everyone remembered how the previous encounters with the millionaire had gone, and no one could forget the subtle but undeniable shift caused by the new waitress. She had faced him without fear, and the memory of her composure inspired those around her. The staff exchanged quiet conversations as they prepared for the lunch crowd. Some of them laughed softly, recounting small victories from the previous night. Others spoke about the millionaire's habit of testing each waiter, of making them feel inadequate. The head waiter, standing near the entrance, reminded them once again to stay calm, professional, and focused. He could see the nervous energy in their eyes, but he also noticed a spark, a small, growing confidence that hadn't been there before. The new waitress arrived early, adjusting her uniform and straightening her posture. She greeted the team warmly, her voice calm but energetic. Everyone watched her, recognizing that she was more than just another staff member. She had become an unspoken symbol of strength in the restaurant. When she smiled at them, it was encouraging and reassuring, a silent message that they could face any challenge with composure. The restaurant began to fill with the lunch crowd. Customers chatted softly, and the kitchen buzzed with activity. The staff moved quickly, anticipating orders, balancing trays, and coordinating with one another. Yet, the tension from the looming presence of the millionaire lingered like a shadow. Every few minutes, a waiter glanced at the door, wondering if today would be the day he returned. The atmosphere was a mix of routine, alertness, and quiet anticipation. Then the door opened. As always, the millionaire stepped in with a confident, almost intimidating air. He scanned the room, his sharp eyes missing nothing. The staff instinctively straightened their backs, and a hush fell over the immediate area near his table. He walked toward his usual spot, a table positioned in the center of the restaurant where he could watch everything unfold. The new waitress noticed him immediately. She moved toward her station, keeping her movements steady and precise. Her expression remained calm, her steps measured, her mind focused on the task at hand. The millionaire looked at her, a faint smirk forming on his lips. He expected hesitation, a nervous glance, or a faltering voice. Instead, he found none. She met his gaze with poise, acknowledging him with a polite nod before taking another customer's order. He decided to test her further. He called her over, his voice carrying authority and subtle challenge. "Bring me the menu and make sure everything is perfect. I don't like mistakes," he said. She took the menu, confirming his order without a hint of fear. She asked polite questions to clarify his preferences and left without rushing, without stammering, without giving him the satisfaction of seeing her unsettled. This simple act unsettled him more than anything he had experienced before. Other waiters observed quietly, their hearts racing. They watched as the new waitress handled him with ease, her movements fluid and professional. She repeated his requests to ensure accuracy, making notes quickly, and returned to the kitchen with the confidence of someone who had nothing to fear. It was a quiet yet powerful demonstration of control and skill. For once, the millionaire was not dictating the atmosphere. She was influencing it in subtle ways that he couldn't quite grasp. Throughout the meal, he tried various tactics to intimidate her. He changed his order multiple times, made sarcastic remarks about the way his food was presented, and even asked impossible questions. Each time, she responded calmly, politely correcting mistakes and confirming details with care. Her voice never wavered, her hands did not shake, and her eyes remained steady. The staff felt a wave of admiration and relief. Finally, someone could manage him without losing composure. The millionaire, however, found himself growing increasingly frustrated. He had been accustomed to power and control, enjoying the fear he inspired in others. Now, his usual methods were ineffective, and he didn't know how to regain the upper hand. He leaned back in his chair, pretending to inspect the room, but his gaze kept returning to the new waitress. Each polite correction, each calm response chipped away at his arrogance, forcing him to confront a situation he hadn't faced before. Meanwhile, the diners noticed the unusual dynamic. Some whispered quietly, sensing a tension that was different from the usual. The millionaire's typical dominance was softened by her calm presence. The atmosphere, while still intense, felt more balanced, almost respectful. People began to appreciate the subtle power of professionalism and courage displayed by the new waitress. Her ability to manage such a challenging customer without a raised voice or dramatic reaction captured their attention and admiration. As the lunch hour continued, the staff began to relax just a little. They watched the millionaire's attempts to dominate fade in the face of calm competence. Even the head waiter allowed himself a small smile, seeing how much difference one person's poise could make. The kitchen staff, once tense and rigid, now worked with a quiet confidence, knowing that the new waitress's influence had shifted the dynamic in their favor. By mid-afternoon, the millionaire had finished his meal. He left a tip, as he always did, but it was delivered with a guarded expression, a sign that he had not achieved the usual satisfaction he sought. The staff breathed a collective sigh of relief, proud of how the new waitress had handled him. There were no dramatic confrontations or victorious speeches, but a quiet, unspoken victory had been achieved. The restaurant felt lighter, more relaxed, and the team felt stronger. After the crowd left, the new waitress returned to her station. She quietly checked tables, rearranged chairs, and ensured that everything was ready for the next wave of customers. She never boasted, never gloated. Her calm confidence spoke for itself. The other staff members exchanged glances, silently acknowledging her strength and skill. They had learned an important lesson. Courage and composure could subtly, but powerfully, change even the most challenging situations. The head waiter approached her and gave a small nod of approval. "You handled him well today," he said quietly. She smiled politely, brushing off the compliment, but inside, she felt a quiet satisfaction. She knew that her role extended beyond serving food. She had demonstrated that respect and professionalism could not be ignored, even by the most arrogant person. As the restaurant closed for the day, the staff reflected on what had happened. The millionaire's behavior had not changed dramatically, but their perspective had. They had witnessed someone face him without fear, and it gave them hope for the future. They discussed strategies, shared experiences, and learned from the new waitress's approach. There was a sense that the restaurant was no longer just a place of work. It had become a place where courage and professionalism could thrive, even under pressure. Though everyone knew the millionaire would return eventually, They no longer feared him in the same way. The new waitress had shown them that strength could be quiet and controlled, and that confidence was more powerful than wealth or arrogance. Her calm presence had created a ripple effect, shifting the energy of the restaurant and inspiring those around her. The staff felt prepared, not just for him, but for any challenge that might come their way. That evening, as the lights dimmed and the last customers left, the restaurant felt different. There was a renewed sense of pride among the staff, a feeling that they could face even the most difficult situations with composure and grace. The new waitress quietly straightened chairs and wiped tables, unaware of the impact she had made. She had not sought attention or praise, but her courage had changed the dynamic of the restaurant in ways that would be remembered for a long time. The millionaire, outside in his car, reflected briefly on the day. He did not realize it yet, but the simple calmness of one person had challenged his perception of control. It was a small moment, but it planted a seed of uncertainty and curiosity that would linger in his mind. He drove away, unaware that he had just encountered someone who could stand up to him without anger or confrontation. The story of the restaurant, the staff, and the new waitress was far from over, but this day marked a subtle yet powerful turning point. The restaurant was quieter than usual that evening, a calm settling over the space as the staff prepared for another busy dinner. There was an air of anticipation, but this time it was different. The previous encounters with the millionaire had left a mark, but now there was also a sense of readiness. The staff had seen how the new waitress had handled him before, and that example had given them strength and courage. The kitchen buzzed with activity, but not the same nervous energy as before. Chefs worked with careful precision, yet their movements had a newfound confidence. Orders were double-checked, but there was no frantic tension. The waiters and waitresses moved with steady determination, knowing they could handle even the most difficult customers. The head waiter encouraged the team with a quiet smile, reminding them that professionalism and calmness could make even the most challenging situations manageable. Then, as if on cue, the door opened. The millionaire entered, his presence commanding immediate attention. He scanned the room, eyes sharp, measuring the staff and the diners. His aura was still imposing, but the staff felt a subtle shift in how they responded. They no longer approached him with pure fear. There was respect mixed with determination. The new waitress noticed him immediately, straightening her posture and moving confidently to her station. He approached his table, his usual smirk in place, ready to assert dominance. He waved at the staff, making small demands, testing their reactions. The new waitress stepped forward to take his order. She smiled politely, her voice calm and clear. "Good evening. May I take your order?" she asked, and her tone held a quiet firmness that he was not used to. The millionaire raised an eyebrow, expecting hesitation or a faltering response, but she showed none. She listened carefully to his instructions, confirming each detail politely and precisely. As she moved to the kitchen to relay the order, he watched, puzzled by her calm composure. Her behavior was unlike any staff he had encountered before. Throughout the meal, he tried various tactics to unsettle her. He changed his order multiple times, made sarcastic remarks, and criticized minor details. Each time, she responded politely, correcting mistakes without showing irritation or fear. She spoke clearly and confidently, repeating his requests and ensuring accuracy without hesitation. Her calmness was disarming, and it began to break the pattern of control he had over others. The staff noticed the change in him. He was becoming frustrated, subtly at first, and then more visibly. His eyes followed her every movement, and his usual laughter and ridicule were replaced with a quiet tension. The other waiters whispered among themselves, amazed at her composure. They could see that her approach was having an effect, challenging his arrogance without confrontation. Then came the moment that changed everything. The millionaire, growing impatient with a small mistake in his dish, leaned forward to scold her. He expected the usual nervous apology or awkward silence. Instead, she looked him in the eye and calmly said 7 words that stunned him. "Respect is earned, not demanded, sir." The restaurant fell silent. The other staff and diners froze, sensing the weight of her words. Even the kitchen seemed to pause for a moment. The millionaire's eyes widened, and for the first time, he did not have a ready response. He had been challenged, not with anger or aggression, but with calm confidence and truth. His usual arrogance wavered, replaced by surprise and a flicker of doubt. He opened his mouth, closed it, and tried to regain control, but the words lingered in the air. The staff watched in awe as the balance of power shifted subtly but undeniably. The new waitress had not shouted, she had not demanded, but her 7 words carried authority, clarity, and courage. The other waiters and waitresses felt a surge of confidence. They realized that fear and intimidation could be met with calmness and dignity. The energy in the restaurant transformed. The staff moved more freely, served more efficiently, and spoke with quiet assurance. The diners, too, sensed the shift and watched with admiration. The millionaire, for all his wealth and power, could not dominate the space as he usually did. As the meal continued, he became quieter, his usual commentary reduced to thoughtful silence. The new waitress continued her work with steady precision, serving not only the millionaire but all customers with equal care and professionalism. Her demeanor reinforced the lesson. Confidence, respect, and composure were more powerful than wealth or status. By the end of the meal, the millionaire finished his order, left a tip, and rose to leave. His expression was unreadable, a mixture of surprise, contemplation, and perhaps a hint of humility. He walked out of the restaurant, leaving the staff with a quiet sense of triumph. The atmosphere had shifted completely. The restaurant no longer trembled under his presence. Instead, it thrived with the strength and composure demonstrated by the new waitress. After he left, the staff exchanged glances filled with relief and admiration. The head waiter nodded in quiet approval, acknowledging her skill and courage. The kitchen staff smiled, knowing that the evening had been a turning point. The new waitress quietly returned to her station, checking tables and preparing for the next service, unaware of the deep respect and gratitude growing around her. The staff reflected on what had happened. The millionaire's behavior had not been forcibly changed, but the balance of power had shifted. They had witnessed the impact of calm confidence and dignity. The new waitress had shown them that fear could be met with courage, that arrogance could be faced with composure, and that respect could be commanded without aggression. The evening ended with a renewed sense of pride and unity among the staff. They knew that the millionaire would return, but they also knew that his usual tactics of intimidation would no longer hold the same power. The new waitress had set an example, teaching a lesson in courage and professionalism that would influence everyone in the restaurant for a long time. The restaurant, once a place where tension followed the millionaire like a shadow, now held an air of quiet confidence and respect. The staff moved with purpose, served with precision, and carried themselves with dignity. The impact of 7 simple words had transformed the dynamic, showing that true strength lies in composure, courage, and the quiet assertion of respect. The millionaire, outside the restaurant, drove away in his car, unaware of the full impact of the moment. His mind replayed the encounter, a flicker of thought and doubt creeping in. For the first time, he had met someone who did not fear him, someone whose calm words carried weight far beyond his wealth or power. The story of the restaurant, the staff, and the new waitress was far from over, but this day marked a significant turning point, a moment that would shape their interactions and change the way the restaurant operated forever. The following morning, the restaurant opened its doors with a calm, steady energy. The staff moved confidently, no longer weighed down by the anxiety of previous encounters. The events of the night before were still fresh in their minds. The new waitress had spoken those 7 simple words that changed everything. Respect is earned, not demanded, sir. It was more than just a statement. It had become a symbol of courage, composure, and quiet power. Everyone felt the shift, a sense of balance that had never been there before. The waiters and waitresses arrived early, preparing the dining area with precision. They moved through the tables and chairs with a practiced rhythm, placing utensils, napkins, and menus neatly. There was a lightness in their steps, a confidence that came from knowing that they could face the millionaire without fear. The head waiter walked among them, offering words of encouragement and subtle guidance. He knew that the restaurant had reached a turning point, and that the team was stronger because of it. The kitchen staff prepared with equal care. Ingredients were fresh, sauces perfectly measured, and dishes carefully arranged. The chefs moved efficiently, confident in their skills, knowing that mistakes would be corrected calmly rather than punished harshly. There was a quiet optimism in the air, a sense that the restaurant could operate with dignity even under the scrutiny of the most demanding customers. As the lunch crowd began to arrive, the staff worked smoothly, taking orders, serving food, and managing requests with poise. There was a harmony in the movements of the team, a synchronized energy that made the restaurant feel alive and welcoming. The diners sensed the difference as well. There was a calm professionalism, a quiet pride in the staff that made the atmosphere more pleasant than ever before. Then the door opened, and the millionaire entered as he always did, his presence commanding attention. He scanned the room with sharp eyes, noting each staff member and their demeanor. The staff, however, no longer approached him with pure fear. There was respect, certainly, but also confidence. The new waitress immediately noticed him, standing straight and poised at her station. Her calm expression met his gaze without flinching. He walked toward his usual table, expecting to reassert control as he had countless times before. His voice carried authority and a hint of impatience. "Make sure everything is perfect. I don't like mistakes," he said. The new waitress approached politely, ready to take his order. "Good afternoon, sir. May I take your order?" she asked calmly, her tone carrying quiet assurance. The millionaire looked at her, anticipation and curiosity mixing in his eyes. He expected hesitation, fear, or perhaps a rushed response. Instead, he found none. She listened carefully, confirmed each detail politely, and relayed the order efficiently. Her calm composure had become second nature, a quality that unsettled him more than any confrontation could. Throughout the meal, he tested her patience and skill. He changed orders, made sarcastic remarks, and commented on minor imperfections. Each time, she responded politely, correcting issues with grace and confidence. She did not raise her voice, did not argue, and did not falter. Her professionalism and calm assertiveness began to affect him subtly. The usual tension and control he enjoyed seemed to lose its grip. The staff watched quietly, inspired by her handling of the situation. Their earlier fear was replaced by admiration and growing confidence. They saw that even the most arrogant person could be met with dignity and poise. The kitchen worked efficiently, confident that the new waitress would handle any challenges calmly, ensuring the service ran smoothly. By the end of the meal, the millionaire had finished his order. He left a tip, but it was given with a thoughtful expression rather than the usual haughty satisfaction. He walked out of the restaurant, his mind replaying the encounter. He had been challenged in a way he had not experienced before, and it had left an impression. He did not know how to process the experience entirely, but he felt a flicker of humility and reflection. The staff breathed a collective sigh of relief. They had witnessed yet another encounter where courage and composure had triumphed over arrogance. The new waitress returned to her station, quietly checking tables and preparing for the next wave of customers. She did not boast about what she had accomplished, but her calm presence spoke volumes to the rest of the team. The head waiter walked over and placed a hand on her shoulder. "You handled him exceptionally today," he said quietly. She nodded politely, accepting the acknowledgement but remaining focused on her work. The staff around them exchanged glances, silently communicating a shared pride and respect. They had learned an invaluable lesson. Fear could be met with courage, and arrogance could be faced with professionalism and dignity. The afternoon passed with steady service, the restaurant operating smoothly. The staff worked together with renewed confidence, managing orders and attending to customers with precision and care. Each successful interaction reinforced the lesson of the previous night. Calm confidence, respect, and competence were more powerful than intimidation or wealth. The restaurant had transformed into a place where staff and customers alike could feel secure, respected, and appreciated. As evening approached, The team prepared for the dinner crowd. They moved efficiently, their steps light and confident. The kitchen staff arranged dishes meticulously, while waiters coordinated to ensure that every customer was attended to promptly. There was a sense of unity and pride among them. They had witnessed the impact of one person's calm composure and had incorporated it into their own work. When the millionaire returned for dinner, the atmosphere remained calm yet alert. The staff no longer feared him entirely. They respected his presence but were prepared to handle his demands with professionalism and quiet confidence. The new waitress stood ready, her demeanor unchanged, embodying the lesson of respect, composure, and courage. The millionaire attempted to assert his usual dominance, but it was less effective than before. His comments and criticisms were met with polite corrections and calm responses. He realized, perhaps reluctantly, that the staff had changed. They were no longer intimidated by him, and the dynamic in the restaurant had shifted. He finished his meal in silence, leaving a tip as always, and departed with a contemplative expression. The staff felt a sense of triumph and relief. They had survived yet another encounter and had seen the profound impact of courage and composure. The restaurant was no longer a place where fear dictated behavior. It had become a space where professionalism, respect, and confidence guided interactions. The new waitress had set an example, teaching an invaluable lesson that would influence the staff and the restaurant for years to come. As the night came to a close, the team cleaned and organized the restaurant with renewed energy. They spoke quietly among themselves, reflecting on the lessons learned and the impact of the new waitress's calm courage. They felt empowered, knowing that they could face challenges, no matter how intimidating, with dignity and professionalism. The millionaire, driving away in his car, reflected on the day. He had encountered someone who did not fear him, someone who had responded to his arrogance with calm confidence and simple truth. Her 7 words, spoken quietly yet firmly, had shifted the dynamic completely. He did not yet fully understand the effect, but he sensed that things had changed. The story of the restaurant, the staff, and the new waitress was far from over, but this day marked the culmination of a journey, a lesson in courage, respect, and quiet power that would shape their interactions forever.